Hello everyone. So this is the part 2 of the series of videos on BEX queries, and in this video I'm going to cover selection, formula, restricted key figure and calculated key figure. So I'm going to run BEX queries on these 4 objects. And in the last part of the video, that is in part 1, I discussed about the differences between selection and restricted key figure, the differences between formula and calculated key figure. I also displayed the BW system, like the info provider, which consists of the info cube and the ODS, on which I'm going to run the BEX queries. So let's get started. Let's move into the query designer. And let's run a very simple query. So let's choose new, and let's choose the info cube, which is over here, and let's quickly create a very basic query. So I'm creating the rows now, so by dragging and dropping the dimensions. So this is the company code dimension, and then I choose the transaction type as the second dimension, and then for the column let me choose acquisition value for transaction and ordinary depreciation on transaction. So this is a very basic report, and this is the preview mode of how the report would look like. And let's save this query now, and let's give it a name. Let's name it BW test 1, and it's saved successfully. So let's look at the data now, how it looks like. So let's open up the query. So that's BW test 1, and so we are looking at the data now. So this column over here, it shows the company code 005, 1000, 2000, 2200, 3000, 5000, 6000, ACIA, F100, and this column shows the transaction type, and it shows the acquisition value for transaction and ordinary depreciation on transaction numbers over here. So we are seeing that the company code 1000 has the highest dollar amount. So we will create our transactional audit for company code 1000, and we will restrict the data for company code 1000, and we will create 2 additional columns which will restrict the data only for company code 1000, both for acquisition value for transactions and ordinary depreciation on transactions. And we will also have one more column which will show the net asset value. So let's quickly go into the system, into the query designer, and let's create those columns and rows. So basically I have created, like to save time on the video, I have already created the query. So let's have a look at it. Probably let's see where I saved it. Probably I saved it in this folder, and probably it's this one. Let's see if it's this one. Yes, in fact I chose the right query. So I see 2 selections over here: acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000 and ordinary depreciation for transaction for company code 1000, and this is the formula. So we can easily create these selections by clicking on the key figure and right clicking, and we can create like new selection, new formula. So let's look at these 2 selections first. So I restricted the data for the key figure acquisition value for transaction based on the company code 1000, as we see over here, and this is a selection and a restriction of the data. And for this one, I did the similar thing, that is I created the restriction of the data based on the company code 1000, and this is the formula which I created, which shows the net asset value. So let's run this query again, and let's see how the report looks like. Opening the query, and so we have captured the data only for company code 1000, that is the acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000 and ordinary depreciation on transaction for company code 1000 in these two columns, and this is the calculated column based on the formula, the net asset value, which is a net of acquisition value for transaction and ordinary depreciation on transaction. So let's go back into the query designer and let's create another query. So basically what I wanted to say for this query is that, so these are the two selections and this is the formula, so they are specific to the query, so they cannot be used again. So they can be used again because we have saved it, and if we did not save it, then this would not be reused again. So let's go back and create another query. So let's choose new, and so I'm pulling in the company code for the row axis and the transaction type for the row axis, and let me so I have actually created two reusable objects. So these are acquisition value for company code 1000, so let's drag and drop them, and ordinary depreciation for transaction for company code 1000. So these are actually reusable objects, and so both of them are restricted key figures and they are linked up with the info provider, so they are not linked up with the specific query. So these are global objects which can be reused as and when required from query to query. So let us run this query. Let us save it first, and let's give it a name. So the first query we named it BW test 1, so let's name it BW test 2, and it's saved successfully. So execute it and let's see how the data looks like. So we are looking for BW test 2 and it's right here, so let's pull that query, and we see that the two columns, acquisition value for transaction for company code 1000 and ordinary depreciation for transaction for company code 1000, so these are the two reusable objects we used in our query, like the two restricted key figures, and it pulled the data for only for company code 1000 because the data was restricted for company code 1000. So that's all about it for the second video, and hope the information was useful, and thank you for watching this video, and see you soon in the third part of the video series on BEX queries. Thank you very much.